Welcome friends to this course on understanding Absurdist drama. We are in week 6 and this is going to be lecture number 4. Today we'll discuss Albert Camus' most famous play Caligula. Albert Camus was a French Algerian philosopher, novelist and playwright known for his contributions to existentialist and absurdist thought. He was born on November 7, 1913 in French Algeria. Camus is often associated with existentialism, but he rejected this label, instead, developing his own philosophy centered around the absurd. His major works include The Stranger, which explores existential isolation and the absurdity of life through the character of Marceau. Another very famous work by Camus is The Myth of Sisyphus, a philosophical essay analyzing the absurd and proposing revolt and defiance as a response, exemplified by the figure of Sisyphus, who finds meaning in his ceaseless struggle. The Plague is a novel set in Algerian town, struck by a deadly epidemic, serving as a metaphor for human resilience and solidarity in the face of suffering. The Fall and the Rebel are some other important works by Albert Camus. In 1957, Camus received the Nobel Prize in Literature. He died tragically in a car accident on January  4, 1960 in France. Ironically, a train ticket found in his pocket revealed that he had planned to travel by train instead of by the car. The play that we are going to discuss is Caligula. It's a story of a man who realizes the absurdity of life, starts acting accordingly. Caligula, the historical Caligula, born as Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, was 3rd century emperor of the Roman Empire, ruling from 13th century CE until his assassination in 41 CE. His reign is one of the most infamous in Roman history, characterized by the allegations of extreme cruelty, eccentricity, and debauchery. While much of what we know about Caligula comes from the ancient historians, including Suetonius, Dio Cassius, and Josephus. However, it is important to note that these sources were written after his death, and their accounts may be influenced by political motivations, bias, or exaggeration. Camus' Caligula is entirely different from historical Caligula. In addition to being cruel and tyrant, Camus' Caligula is one who had understood the absurdity of life. His actions are not just driven by cruelty or power, but by a deep realization that life itself is meaningless. After the death of his sister and lover, Drusilla, Caligula becomes disillusioned with all societal norms and values. In his pursuit of the absurd, he rejects traditional morality and embraces chaos and destruction as a way to express his realization that existence is ultimately without purpose and without meaning. Let us discuss some passages from the play to understand what this play is all about. When the play starts, we find out some people talking about sudden disappearance of Caligula. After the death of his beloved sister Drusilla, Caligula has suddenly gone somewhere and people are unaware about his whereabouts. First patrician says, still no news. Elderly patrician says, nothing in the morning, nothing at night. Second patrician says, nothing for 3 days. Elderly patrician says, the messengers leave, then return, shake their heads and say, nothing. These people are unable to understand why Caligula is so upset about the death of his sister and lover Drusilla. Death is normal. Human capacity for mourning is also limited, as the first patrician rightly says. In any case, fortunately, sorrows are not eternal. Can anyone suffer for more than a year? Second patrician says, I cannot. First patrician says, no one can. Elderly patrician says, one would not survive. First patrician says, you are right. For instance, last year my wife died and I cried a lot, but then I forgot. Now from time to time I feel sadness, but deep down it is nothing. First patrician says, nature knows what it is doing. Camus, through these characters, is highlighting the longevity of human sorrow. If happiness is transient, if happiness is short lived, even sorrow is also temporary. One cannot mourn for long. The maximum duration suggested by one of the patricians is 1 year. If you observe the various rituals of several religious traditions, including Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity, you will find out that they have defined a mourning period. Human beings, after the death of someone, mourn only for that specific period. However, one has to understand here that there is a difference between mourning and grieving. Mourning is ritual, grieving is personal, it is suffering. Perhaps we have to understand that Caligula is not mourning. His sorrow is not ritualistic. He is grieving on the death of Drusilla. After a few scenes, we meet the hero of the play, or you can also call him anti-hero or villain, whatever you prefer to. And his name is Caligula. There is a very interesting conversation which we are going to read. Helicon says, yes, you have been gone for a long time. Caligula says, it was not easy to find. Helicon says, find what? Caligula says, what I wanted. Helicon asks, what did you want? Caligula says, the moon. Helicon says, what? Caligula says, yes, I wanted the moon. Helicon says, why? Caligula says, well, it is one of the things I do not know. You would observe that very opening sentences spoken by Caligula are absurd. Caligula has disappeared, and he says he has disappeared to find out the moon. Why does he want to find out the moon? Why does he want the moon? What is the symbolic meaning of the word moon? Whether moon symbolizes happiness or it symbolizes something else. Death has disturbed Caligula. In order to overcome his sorrows, he wants something else, and he has chosen one object for that, and that becomes moon. Although his desire for the moon apparently seems absurd. One can never find out the moon. One can never have the moon. It is an impossibility. Yet this is what Caligula desires. Like all human beings who desire something which is usually impossible. Caligula is aware that his longing is theoretically impossible, yet he desires it. Like all human beings desire whatever appears impossible for them. Caligula says, right, well, the thing is, I am not crazy. I'll even tell you, I have never been so sane. I have simply felt an impossible longing. I don't like the way things are. Helicon says, that's a fairly common opinion. Caligula says, but I did not know that until now. Now I do. I cannot stand this world. I don't like it the way it is. Therefore, I need the moon or happiness or immortality. Something that, as mad as it may seem, is not of this world. Further, Caligula says, what do you know? Precisely because no one takes it to its ultimate consequences. Nothing is ever achieved, but perhaps it is enough to be logical to the very end. I also know what you are thinking now. So much fuss over a woman's death? No, it has nothing to do with her. I vaguely recall it is true that a few days ago a woman I loved died. But what is love? Very little. Her death means nothing to me. I swear it simply reveals a truth that drives me to desire the moon. It is a truth that is extremely clear and simple. And although it is a bit foolish, it is hard to discover and even harder to bear. Helicon asks, and what is that truth, Gaius? Caligula says, men die and are not happy. So it is clear that for Caligula, moon symbolizes happiness. It may symbolize immortality. Both happiness and immortality are impossible for a human being to achieve in this life. But this is what Caligula wants, as I have repeatedly told you. Caligula is not sad about the death of his beloved Drusilla. He is sadder because he has understood the meaning of human life. He has understood that men die and are not happy. So here Caligula foregrounds the two most important truths of human existence. One, that human beings are mortal. All human beings who are born, they die. Two, all human beings suffer. Happiness is not in their luck. Caligula is also unhappy about the world in which he lives. This world, in the eyes of Caligula, is a futile world, an indifferent world, cruel world. He does not like the way this world functions. Therefore, he wants to change the world. Fortunately, he is powerful. He is emperor, and therefore he decides to change the course of the world, of course, in which he is bound to fail. Talking about this world, Caligula further says, don't defend it because the cause has already been judged. This world is meaningless, and those who acknowledge that will conquer their freedom. I hate you precisely because you are not free. I am now the only free being in the entire Roman Empire. Rejoice! At last you have an emperor who will teach you freedom. Go, Quirius, and you too, Scipion. Friendship makes me laugh. Go and announce to Rome that it has finally regained its freedom and that this heralds a new era. So, Caligula is reiterating the futility of the world, the meaninglessness of the world. Caligula has understood that love has no meaning in this world. Friendship has no meaning in this world. And because he has understood the meaninglessness of this world, he has become free. And because he is free and he is an emperor, he has the possibility to make the entire Rome free. There are some moments in the play wherein Caligula reveals his inner mind to people he is close to. Caesonia is one of them. The conversation between Caesonia and Caligula is another exposition of the absurdist philosophy. Caesonia says, but let us see what has changed. If it is true that you loved Drusilla, you loved her at the same time as you loved me and many others. That is not a good enough reason for you to flee for 3 days and nights to the countryside and return so hostile. Caligula says, what does Drusilla have to do with all this crazy woman? Do you think a man only cries for love? Men cry because things are not as they should be. Leave me, Caesonia. And then he backs off and says, but stay with me. Caesonia says, I'll do whatever you want. When a person reaches my age, they know life is not good. But if evil exists in this world, what is gained by contributing to it? Caligula says, you can't understand. It does not matter. Maybe I'll get through this, but I feel nameless beings arising within me. What will I do to fight them? Ah, Caesonia, I knew a man could be desperate, but I did not know what that word meant. I thought, like everyone else, that it was an affliction of the soul. But no, it is the body that suffers. My skin hurts, my chest, my limbs, my head is empty, my stomach is twisted, and the worst is this taste in my mouth, something that does not taste like blood, nor death, nor fever, but like all of that at once. With just a move of my tongue, I see everything black, and people make me nauseous. How hard and bitter it is to become a man. We have to understand here that Caligula's mourning for Drusilla is not ordinary mourning. Caligula is not crying because Drusilla is dead. He is crying because he wants to change the world. He does not want the world to remain as it is, a world marred by cruelty, violence, betrayal, evil, jealousy, so on and so forth. If this is the nature of the world, Caligula wants to change it with his power. Caesonia tries to convince him that this is no response to the world you are living in. Good and evil are both found in the world. If one cannot be good, there is no point in contributing in evil by becoming one. However, Caligula is not convinced by the arguments of Caesonia. He hates mankind. He considers that human beings are like worms. He finds them nauseating. And being a man, he understands how hard and bitter it is to be a man. To counter the absurdity of the world and its boredom, Caligula becomes a cruel dictator. He starts imposing unnecessary taxes on the people. He starts ordering irrational execution of men and courtiers. Let us read this conversation to find out how cruel and tyrannical Caligula has become. Caligula says, excuse me, but state affairs are urgent as well. Steward, you will order the public granaries to be closed. I just signed the decree. It is in your room. But Caligula says, tomorrow there will be famine. The steward says, but the people will protest. Caligula says, I said tomorrow there will be famine. Everyone knows famine. It is a plague. Tomorrow there will be a plague, and I'll stop the plague when I feel like it. After all, I don't have many ways of proving that I am free. One is always free at the expense of someone else. It is a drag, but it is normal. Apply this thought to jealousy and you will see, because look how ugly it is to be jealous, to suffer for vanity and imagination, to see one's wife. As it is obvious from the conversation, Caligula is declaring that from tomorrow there will be famine. Of course, no human being can do this. Yet Caligula is all powerful. He is an emperor. He thinks he can cause famine. He can cause plague. But the question is, why does he want to plague humanity? Why does he want to make mankind suffer? He wants to make mankind suffer because he realizes that they are not worth living. What is the point of their existence? If they are born and if they are dying and if they are suffering, there is no meaning that they should live. Caligula also wants to prove that he is absolutely free. You would remember in one of the previous dialogues which we have read, he says, I am the only free person in entire Rome. In order to prove that he is absolutely free, he wants to do whatever he wants to. For Caligula, freedom becomes absolute irresponsibility. He does not want to remain responsible to anybody but to himself or herself. However, we have to understand here that Camus here critiques this irrational, nonsensical idea of freedom. Because we live in the world, our freedom is bound to be curtailed by the freedom of others. If we want to have absolute freedom without any curtailment, that is an impossibility. Unless we go beyond the world, unless we die, this absolute freedom is an impossibility. And therefore, human longing for absolute freedom is as absurd as any other human longing. We also come to know from the members of his court and other Romans that Caligula has become a dictator. He has been ordering the execution of men and other courtiers here and there as and when he desires. If he decides to kill somebody, he gets that person killed. Why does he do so? Let us find out. In the play, first Patrician says, Patricius, he has confiscated your property, Scipion. He has killed your father, Octavio. He has abducted your wife and now forces her to work in a brothel. Lepido, he has killed your son. Are you going to tolerate this? As for me, I have already made my decision. Between the risk I might face and this unbearable life where fear and impotence reign, I won't think twice. Scipio says, by killing my father, he has chosen for me. First Patrician says, can you still doubt it? Third Patrician says, we are with you. He gave our seats in the circus to the people and made us fight with plebeians only to punish us afterward. Old Patrician says he is a coward. Second Patrician says he is a cynic. Third Patrician says he is a clown. Old Patrician says he is impotent. And fourth Patrician informs it has been 3 years. So, from this conversation, we come to know that Caligula has become a murderer. Caligula has become an abductor. He has got women killed, children killed. He has indulged himself in debauchery. However, the question that remains before us, why is Caligula doing all this? Caligula himself informs us about his cynical behavior. Caligula says, each one earns purity in their own way. I do it by pursuing the essential. Of course, that does not stop me from ordering your death. It would be crowning achievement of my career. Caligula says, it is curious when I don't kill. I feel alone. The living are not enough to populate the universe and chase away the boredom. When you are all here, you make me feel an infinite void that I cannot face. I am only comfortable among my dead. They are the real ones. They are like me. They wait for me and push me. I have long conversations with those who asked me for mercy and whom I had their tongues cut out. So Caligula is indicating that he has chosen violence, murder, and cruelty to fight out his boredom. In the absence of these heinous, brutal acts, Caligula feels infinite void within. He cannot face this nothingness that he is experiencing. He cannot reconcile himself with the indifference of the world, with the futility of the world, with the meaninglessness of the world. And that's why he has given himself some purpose, some goal. And the goal is to get human beings killed because they are not worth living. As the play approaches its end, we realize that Romans and Roman courtiers start despising Caligula. They start thinking of murdering him. And perhaps Caligula is aware that they are hatching some conspiracy to murder Caligula. It is evident in his conversation with Caesonia. Caesonia says, "No, they won't kill you. If they try, something will descend from the sky and annihilate them before they can touch you." Caligula says, "From the sky, there is no sky, you fool. But why this sudden love? This is not part of our pact." Caesonia gets up and says, "Isn't it enough to see how you kill others to know that they will kill you too? Isn't it enough that you come to me destroyed and cruel, that I smell death when you climb on my belly? Every day I see a little more of what is human in you dying. I am old and soon I will be ugly, and I know that, but the concern I feel for you has driven me to the point that I no longer care if you don't love me. My only wish is that you heal because you are still a child with a whole life ahead of you. Tell me, what are you looking for that is bigger than an entire life?" When Caesonia suggests that God is there to protect Caligula, Caligula immediately rejects any notion of God. He says there is no sky, no divine intervention can come and save Caligula. Caesonia is bothered about the murder of human in Caligula. By getting other human beings murdered every day, Caligula is losing a bit of humanity lying within. Because humanity, according to Caesonia, is not in murder, not in violence, not in cruelty, but in love, in compassion. According to Caesonia, Caligula is childlike. If he heals, there is a possibility that he can become something else. He can be happier, which Caligula vehemently rejects. Caligula says, "I am 29, it is little, but at this moment, when my life seems so long, so full of waste, in the end so consumed, you are the last witness. And I cannot help but feel a kind of shameful affection for that old woman you will soon become." Caesonia says, "Tell me, you want me by your side?" Caligula says, "I don't know, but I am aware that is the most terrible thing. This shameful affection is the only pure feeling life has given me until now." Caligula says, "Won't it be better if the last witness disappeared?" Caesonia says, "That does not matter. What you have said makes me happy. But why can't I share that happiness with you?" Caligula says, "Who says I am not happy?" It is obvious from this conversation between Caesonia and Caligula that Caligula has understood the absurdity of life. He has realized that his life is a waste, even though he is an emperor, even though he is so powerful, even though he can command life and death. And because of this realization of the absurdity of life, Caligula says he is happier. You would remember Albert Camus' other famous book, The Myth of Sisyphus, where Camus has said that happiness and the absurd cannot be separated. The moment you realize the absurdity of the world, you laugh at it, and that moment of laughter becomes the moment of happiness. The world is tragic as long as we have desires, as long as we don't realize its meaninglessness. The moment of realization of the meaninglessness and purposelessness of the world constitutes the feeling of happiness. In the play, Caligula tries to theorize and philosophize about happiness. Caligula says, "There are two kinds of happiness, and I have chosen that of the killers because I am happy. There was a time when I believed I had reached the limit of pain. Well, no. One can go even further. At the edges of that realm, there rules a sterile and magnificent happiness. To love someone is to accept growing old with them. I am incapable of such love. Old Drusilla was much worse than dead Drusilla. People think a man suffers because his loved one dies suddenly, but his true suffering is less trivial. He suffers because he realizes that even sorrow does not last, even pain is meaningless. You see, I had no excuse, not the shadow of love, nor the bitterness of melancholy. I have no justification. But now I am even freer than I was years ago, because I have freed myself from memory and illusion. I know that nothing lasts. I live, I kill, I wield the delirious power of the destroyer. Compared to that power, that of the creator seems like pantomime. That is happiness, that unbearable liberation, that universal contempt, the blood, the hatred around me, that unparalleled isolation of man who encompasses his entire life with a glance, the unrestrained joy of the unpunished killer, that relentless logic that crushes human lives. And he laughs, that crushes you, Sidonia, to finally reach the eternal solitude I crave. If you observe this dialogue by Caligula, you can easily argue that it is filled with absurdist consciousness. Caligula is proposing pain is as meaningless as happiness. Caligula is also indicating that life is transient. The end of life is death. Although we cannot be sure what Caligula has said is authentic or not, yet we have to understand that it has profound implications. Caligula says he has freed himself from two important obstructions of human life. One, memory, which connects a man to the past, and illusion, which connects a man to the future. If a human being frees himself from both memory and illusion, in other words, from past and future, then only a human being can be free. Caligula says, because he has freed himself from both, he is happier. He loves death because he understands today or tomorrow everyone has to die. Therefore, as a king, he decides that the person should die today. Why tomorrow? He has that power and he exercises that power. He forces people to die sooner so that they become happier earlier. However, it's not that Caligula desires the death of others. He is also aware of his own impending death. He knows that very soon his own courtiers are going to kill him. And he is not bothered about that because he has understood that his death is as meaningless as the death of anyone else. All human lives are equally insignificant, whether it is a great man or a poor man. The play ends with Caligula's absurd consciousness. Caligula says, Caligula, you too are guilty. So in the end, a little more, a little less. But who would dare to condemn me in this world without a judge, where no one is innocent? You see, Helicon has not come, the moon won't be mine, but how bitter it is to possess the truth and have to bring it to completion. Caligula is aware that he cannot be condemned. Who will condemn him? If all human beings are alike, if all human beings are sinners, then there is no judge who can say what Caligula did was right or wrong. You would observe yourself that so much violence is happening in the world. There are wars, there are rapes, there are criminal activities happening here and there. If you try to rationalize these occurrences, you will fail to understand why they are happening, how they are happening. Caligula wants to end the world because the end of the world would also mean the end of evil from the world. Therefore, Caligula's desire is not only to end the world but also to end the evil from the world. And the end of the evil is not possible without power. And of course, that power is equally temporary, is equally absurd, is equally futile, and is equally insignificant. At the surface level, the story of Caligula is about the corruption of power, how power has corrupted Caligula. But at the deeper level, in Camus' play, Caligula emerges as an absurdist hero. Caligula has understood the meaninglessness of the world. He knows that there is no inherent meaning of the world. As a consequence, he has decided to impose his own meaning upon the world. However, his tale is cautionary. It shows that human desire for power is futile, is useless, is worthless. Caligula has failed, like all human beings fail. That's all for today, friends. We'll meet in our next class. Thank you.